Hi, and welcome to another episode of Making Things. Today we'll be talking about how to cut arches in laminate wood.
Right.
Now this actually comes from a question from a user who asked me how to best cut, or if I had any suggestions on cutting arches. Now my personal experience is more with material that you would then sand, which is not the case for laminate. Or countertops where I don't care because I'm going to be putting a sink with a nice large lip around on the chipped edge. So it led me to actually wonder what would work best, whether it be a jigsaw, jigsaw with a nice really fine tooth blade, or a rotary cutter which would have the added precision because they usually come with this little arch cutting apparatus, or you can get one for dirt cheap, whereas you're going to be freehanding the jigsaw. Now if you're doing a big enough arch, odds are freehanding the jigsaw you'd be able to get a pretty nice cut out of that. And then just for fun, I'm also going to throw in there testing this little palm router. So it's a laminate router or a trim router, depending on how you call it, what you Google or whatever, depending on what the company decided to call it. But they all do the same thing. They're just lower power routers. So we're going to see how this does as well. The blade I'll be testing for the rotary cutter is just one of these, what they call diamond blades, but that's just referring to the cutter shape as far as I can tell. I doubt they actually use diamond dust on these. They're dime a dozen, so. But still. So I've installed the first part of the plate already, and I'm just gonna put on the second half. Pretty simple. You just screw this on, and now once we've anchored this, we'll be able to just get a nice arch. And if you're doing a bigger one, I'm demoing this with a small one, but if you're doing a bigger arch, you can do this, but you can also just use any old piece of scrap metal or a piece of wood, actually, just as easily. And instead of having, a built-in adjustable spike, you just put a nail at one end, and you somehow make sure that your tool stays at the same distance of the other end, and you got the exact same tool here. So if you're doing a custom job for a larger size, single size, it's really easy to do a one-time jig. Now I happen to be low on laminate right now, or at least on scraps, so I'm not going to be making very large arches, just for the simple reason that I want to be able to test 3 different methods. And I've got these nice little chunks of metal in the way, so I'm going to be a little careful with that. Now when you're using one of these, you need to offset, and it's going to be the same if you're using a jig, you need to offset your anchoring point, because just if you're starting on the edge, what'll happen is once you get to you start coming back a little bit, and so you're gonna have a curved lip on the inside. So we can actually demo this with just a random piece of metal. Take 2 holes that are the same length. If I'm doing my arch with my anchor point here, I've got my nice semicircle, but once I get to the edge, I start curving back in a little bit, and you can see here it started going back in. So a straight cutout would be here, right over here, where 90° from it. So you've got this tiny little curvature. I'll just make it bigger to make it more visible. So if we start further in, hope you figure what's going to happen by now. you know, you've got your full circle. So if you want your straight edge, you're going to have to cut it afterwards if you're looking for kind of a D shape. If you're looking for really a perfect C shape, you're going to want to make sure that you're anchoring your pivot outside of your board. Alright, so that's pretty horrible because the little holder thing came loose. I've only ever used one-time jigs because it's so small. I thought this would be nice just for the testing purposes, but I wouldn't really recommend it as far as making accurate cuts where you're not scared that the thing will slip and screw up everything. So I would definitely recommend going with a one-off jig where you use a piece of metal or wood or something, because this is a hideous arch, really. So, first look, what we can see is it blew out the edge a little bit, but that's because it's not going all the way through. And it also, in this case, in the case of the user who asked the question, they're going to be redoing the edging, so non-issue. And I'm actually pretty impressed at how clean the top is, and I think it's because this laminate stuff is probably some sort of plastic, and it's most likely being melted clean just by the friction of this horribly noisy blade. So that one was a pretty surprising. Like I expected the roto-zip to probably be the best option between that and the jigsaw. Router, we'll see, but I'm actually surprised at how good that is. Now for the jigsaw, I'm gonna have to go out of sight for this one, and I'm gonna try to follow this arch here. So we'll see what that gives. Alright, so this was actually a temporary workbench and it was vibrating everything off, so I had to just go on the floor, which means I didn't have a very good vantage point. So following the arch kind of failed a little bit, but that one was on me. And it actually curves really nicely, as you can see. The issue though is that I have a lot of chipping, but again, this was an unclamped piece and I was just kind of holding it by hand and it was shaking quite a bit. At the beginning it gave a really nice result. A few little chips though, even when it was going smoothly. Let's see if I can zoom in on this. So even when it was going smoothly, I still got two little nice nicks there. And then this is when I was doing the arch, a lot more resistance, and it was pulling, and you can see the outfeed side is nowhere nearly as nice. Well, it's not an outfeed side really, but the other side is nowhere nearly as nice. We've got chips all along the side here, even when I was getting a nice clean cut through it. So if what you have is a jigsaw, you can go to the store, get a high quality fine tooth blade. You can probably get away with a pretty decent job, and honestly it'll be a lot easier to handle and a lot easier to get a good curve. This thing I was only going in, with this thing I was only going in a 1/4 inch deep, and it was a lot of resistance, a lot of pressure actually had to be applied. I'm not sure how well it would go to keep a nice smooth line, so that may be something to consider. A factor to consider here is it may be nicer to get a chipped edge, clean it up, and then just, you know, when you're resurfacing the edge, use that extra little lip to cover your tapered edge. And now something that's actually going to allow us to kind of look into that is while I'm using the trim router, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to see if I can also do a beveled edge on here, because if you can do that, then you can most definitely clean this up with a nice clean sharp angle. Now, two things as I'm going to be using this trim router. First off, I in no way think that this seems like an efficient way to do it. I mean, we're going to have to be tearing out quite a bit, but I was just curious actually. Just figured while I'm testing it, might as well test it right. And if you've seen my other videos, you'll know that when it comes to having a nice finish on your laminate, it's all about the blade. Well, I mean, I guess that's true of more than just laminate, but I have a cullet in here. Now, one thing when you're using these, make sure you face the vent away from your hand. If the ball is going to be in the way and you're going to be holding it, you know, backwards, make sure your fingers can't go in here. And if you are holding it properly, make sure you don't put this backwards where your little fingers can go and get all chewed up. Oh, well, I was not gentle to that blade, going in 1/4 inch all at once, but that's kind of my goal. Obviously, if you're doing this in multiple passes, you can have a way easier time doing this, but that wasn't the point. Clean this out, and oh, beautiful. So this is by far the nicest cut we've gotten so far. If anything, because it doesn't tear out the inside, this kind of chews out the inside here, and I'd be a little worried when it comes time. I hadn't thought of that before, but I'd be a little worried when it comes time to, well, I guess it'd be fine, but I mean, nothing like this. I'm gonna have to cut this so you can see it properly. There, I retrimmed the tip just so that we can see what it looks like on the inside of the cut. And actually, perfect. On this unfinished edge, come on, you can do it. There you go. On this unfinished edge, it's pretty hard to tell where the factory cut was and where this router cut was. And if you flip it over, you can see. There you go. There, we can see this, and it's really nice. So if you have access to a palm router, going through it very slowly with a lot of passes, if you want the absolute best result, and if you're looking for, you know, a finishing piece, that might be worth your time. I mean, these go for, I think it's $50 for the battery. You know, you can get a nice Bosch one for about $100. There's no, if you don't already have the right tool to do this and you're going to go out and buy one of them, this is no more expensive. A trim router is no more expensive than a decent jigsaw. So Actually, not even. It's no more expensive than an equivalent quality jigsaw. So if you're going to be taking the time to do a finishing piece, you don't mind going at it slowly, many passes, a little bit at a time. This might be worth it for getting intricate designs. Now, don't get me wrong, if you're doing straight cuts, forget it. The table saw is still your best bet. Circular handheld saw, same thing. We've already shown that. Results were phenomenal when you go with a nice high tooth blade, high quality high tooth blade. But if you need to get a few curves in here and you want them to really shine, yeah, this is your bet. By the way, if you're going to be doing this, do it right as well. I really gave this one a scorching. I should have been more patient. Oh well. The burn certainly doesn't come as a surprise. Now well, I don't even need to test it actually. I know for sure that's going to be fine. Just seeing what it's done, but because I said I'd do it, I'll do it anyways. Sure enough, does a fantastic job. So if you're going to be cutting with the jigsaw and you have access to a palm router, you don't want to cut through with a palm router because you're going to eat through your bits, destroy them like I did here. You don't have the patience to go in many passes, or whatever other reason, you can most certainly just go after, take off your 16th, a 32nd, maybe even, and give this a nice finish before you go ahead and refinish the surface. So perfect. I hope this was helpful to you. If it was, please like, subscribe, leave some feedback. Have a good day.